Namaste, welcome to our journey into the complex web of terrorism. What if I told you that we are about to embark on a journey into the depths of one of humanity's most troubling phenomena? But before we dive in, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and share this video with friends. This will help us reach more people with these important discussions. Now, let's delve into the intricate web of our subject. Beneath the surface of our seemingly peaceful world lie threads of violence and chaos, often woven by the hands of terrorism, a word that chills, a word synonymous with destruction, fear, and despair. But what exactly is terrorism? For some, it could be a puzzle, an elusive and multifaceted phenomenon. It's hard to define and even harder, which is why we're going to break it down with simple explanations, interesting insights, and relevant photos and videos. At its core, terrorism is the use of violence or threat thereof, especially against civilians pursuing political, religious, or ideological objectives. The actors, motives, and methods in these acts can vary significantly, making it a truly global issue. But remember, one man's terrorist can be another man's freedom fighter. This dichotomy is what makes this definition so contentious. Depending on one's perspective, groups fighting for rights can be labeled as freedom fighters or as terrorists causing widespread destruction. This subjectivity adds another layer to the already intricate web of terrorism. From the zealots of ancient Rome to today's various extremist groups, terrorism has left its devastating mark on societies across the globe. It disrupts economies, weakens social structures, and instills fear. It undermines global peace security, often leading to a vicious cycle of violence and retribution. So what drives people to terrorism? Is it social and economic disparities, political ideologies, or religious beliefs, or maybe a mix of these? Join us as we attempt to answer these questions and more. Understanding terrorism is the first step towards combating it. But to truly understand it, we need to dive deep into its historical. The seeds of terrorism were sown long before our time. Its roots trace back to centuries ago. In fact, it's a historical phenomenon that dates back to the 1st century AD. Yes, you heard it right, the 1st century. Back then, terrorism was characterized by the use of violence by small groups against larger, often state entities, to achieve political, religious, or social objectives. Fast forward to the Middle Ages, the term terrorism started to take a more definitive form. It was during this era that secret societies began to use terror as a means of undermining the authority of the state. The Assassins, for instance, were a sect that used targeted killings to establish a state based on their religious beliefs. As we move into the age of revolutions, from the late 18th to the early 19th century, the concept of terrorism took another turn. The French Revolution introduced Régime de la Terreur, where the state used terror to consolidate power and suppress its enemies. This marked a shift in the use of terror from non-state actors to state actors. The 20th century saw the evolution of terrorism into what we recognize today. The advent of technology and global media allowed terrorist acts to reach a global audience, increasing their impact. It was during this time that we saw the rise of various terrorist groups, each with their own ideologies and methods. The path of history is stained with acts of terrorism, but the 21st century brought with it a new player in this deadly game. New forms of terrorism began to emerge, shaped by political, social, and technological changes. But that's a story for another time. This journey through history shows us that terrorism is not a new phenomenon. It has been a part of human society for centuries, constantly adapting and evolving. But one thing remains constant: its destructive impact on societies and individuals alike. In the wake of the 21st century, two nations emerged at the forefront of global terrorism: Pakistan and Afghanistan. These two neighboring countries, with their complex political landscapes and societal struggles, became the epicenters of a major global concern. Pakistan, known for its strategic geographical location, has been a key player in the global terrorism narrative. The country has been accused of harboring and providing safe havens for numerous terrorist groups. These groups are said to use Pakistan as a base to plan and execute attacks, not only within its borders but also on international soil. Various internationally recognized terrorist organizations, such as Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, have had significant presence in the country. The involvement of Pakistan in global terrorism has led to international scrutiny and pressure to take decisive action against these groups. Meanwhile, Afghanistan, a country ravaged by decades of conflict, has also played a significant role in the spread of terrorism. From the Soviet invasion in the late 20th century to the more recent occupation by the United States, Afghanistan has been a fertile ground for the rise and spread of extremist ideologies. The power vacuum left by the withdrawal of foreign troops led to the resurgence of the Taliban, turning Afghanistan once again into a hotbed for terrorist activities. The societal implications of terrorism in these countries are profound. From economic instability to the displacement of millions of people, the scourge of terrorism has taken a heavy toll. It has perpetuated cycles of violence, poverty, and social inequality, thereby making it even harder for these nations to break free from the shackles of terrorism. The political implications are equally significant. Pakistan and Afghanistan's involvement in global terrorism has not only strained their relations with other countries, but also complicated their internal politics. The struggle to balance the fight against terrorism and the preservation of national sovereignty has been a constant challenge for their governments. Yet, the story of terrorism remains incomplete without mentioning the role of one more key player. The USA, a global superpower, has a complex and multifaceted relationship with terrorism. It's a relationship that traces its roots back to the latter half of the 20th century, when the United States found itself embroiled in the political intricacies of the Middle East. The US's involvement in the region was motivated by a myriad of factors, including the desire to establish a strategic foothold and ensure a steady supply of oil. This involvement, however, had a ripple effect that would later surface in the form of the devastating 9/11 attacks. Orchestrated by Al-Qaeda, a group that had its roots in the Afghan resistance against Soviet invasion, a conflict in which the US had a significant role, the attacks were a stark reminder of the interconnected nature of global events. In response to the attacks, the United States launched what it called the War on Terror, a global military, legal, and political campaign against various international terrorist organizations. This campaign included invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq, with the stated aim of dismantling Al-Qaeda and other terrorist organizations and preventing them from launching further attacks against the United States. However, this war on terror has had far-reaching implications. On one hand, it led to the elimination of key terrorist figures, including Al-Qaeda's leader, Osama bin Laden. On the other hand, it resulted in widespread criticism due to the high civilian casualty rates and allegations of human rights violations. Moreover, the power vacuum left in the aftermath of the US invasions, particularly in Iraq, led to the emergence of new terrorist groups, such as ISIS. This further complicated the global dynamics of terrorism and counterterrorism efforts. As we navigate the labyrinth of global terrorism, it's crucial to stay updated on the latest developments. The role of the United States, both in the past and present, continues to shape this complex landscape, reminding us that the roots of terrorism are often tangled in the webs of international politics and power dynamics. Terrorism continues to evolve, posing new threats to world peace. In the contemporary world, we see the face of terrorism altering, adapting, and presenting new challenges. One of the most recent examples is the situation in India. Late last year, an anti-Muslim rally spiraled into a series of violent attacks against Muslims in Tripura, India. The aftermath was a troubling mix of fear, confusion, and governmental action that has raised eyebrows around the globe. The Indian government responded by charging academics, journalists, and activists under a stringent anti-terrorism law, the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, or UAPA, for their social media posts about the attacks. This action has been widely criticized as it potentially stifles free speech and has a chilling effect on the democratic process. The use of such laws to control narratives and suppress dissent is a new form of state-orchestrated terror that the world must grapple with. The response to these charges has been global. There have been expressions of concern from the international community, including US Congressman Andy Levin, who voiced worries about the religious violence in Tripura and Bangladesh. The situation has highlighted the importance of international vigilance and solidarity in the face of terror, be it from non-state actors or state institutions. In another part of India, a long-standing conflict with Maoist rebels continues. This armed campaign, which began in the 1960s, has resulted in thousands of deaths and reflects the enduring nature of terrorism. The government has deployed tens of thousands of forces to combat the rebels in the Red Corridor region, demonstrating the ongoing struggle against terrorism. These incidents remind us that terrorism is not a static phenomenon. It changes with time, adapts to new contexts, and presents fresh challenges. From state-sanctioned suppression to the persistence of armed rebel groups, the face of terror in today's world is diverse and complex. In a world plagued by terrorism, understanding its complexities is our strongest weapon. So let us continue to educate ourselves, stay informed, and work together for a world where peace and justice are not just ideals, but realities. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the ever-evolving landscape of terrorism. We have covered a lot of ground, from the intricate web of terrorism to its origins, the roles of different nations, and its current manifestations. But our exploration doesn't stop here. The fight against terrorism requires continuous learning, vigilance, and action. It requires us to question, to empathize, and to engage in discussions that might be uncomfortable but are necessary. Remember, information is our greatest ally in this fight. Staying informed about the world around us, understanding the complexities of these issues, and fostering a spirit of unity and respect for all are critical steps to combating the destructive force of terrorism. It is our collective responsibility to strive for a world where peace isn't just an ideal, but our lived reality. So let's continue to educate ourselves, to ask difficult questions, and to stand up for what's right. Let's be the change we wish to see in the world. Thank you again for being part of this discussion. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and most importantly, stay kind. We look forward to seeing you in our next video as we continue to delve into the issues that shape our world.